Shalom. This is the second of our series of shiurim this summer about the Sheish Zechirot. So the second one that we're going to talk about is Zachor et Yom HaShabbat Lekadsho, the mitzvah of remembering Shabbos. Now the pasuk is actually very interesting because it says, to quote it literally, remember the day of Shabbos to keep it holy. Now if you notice in this pasuk, there are actually two verbs in this pasuk. First of all, to remember Shabbos, and number two, to keep it holy. Which of those is the main verb, and what does that mean is the ikar, is the main point of this mitzvah? Is the mitzvah of Zachor Yom HaShabbat Lekadsho really a mitzvah of remembering Shabbos, or is the primary mitzvah a mitzvah of making Shabbos holy, of sanctifying Shabbos? So actually, both of these concepts, remembering Shabbos and sanctifying Shabbos, appear in the words of Chazal. First of all, let's talk about the first perspective, remembering Shabbos. So if we think about it, when do we remember something? And the answer is we usually remember something when it's not there. And therefore, if the mitzvah is remembering Shabbos, then the mitzvah would probably be not on Shabbos, meaning remember Shabbos when it's not there, and remember that it will come soon. So we find this in the Mechilta de Rashbi, where there are two opinions which are very similar, different but similar. First of all, we have the opinion of Shammai Hazaken, a very famous story about Shammai Hazaken, who would save all of the best food all during the week for Shabbos. And he did that to be Makayim the mitzvah, in his own words, of Zachor Yom HaShabbat Lekadsho. He would remember Shabbos during the week when it's not Shabbos by preparing for it during the week. Similarly, an interesting opinion of Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera writes that by calling the days of the week by Yom Rishon, Yom Sheni, the first day, the second day, meaning we are calling the days of the week according to their distance from Shabbos, that would be a kiyum, a fulfillment of the mitzvah of Zachor et Yom HaShabbat. Because then, during the other 6 days of the week, by calling Friday Yom Shishi, you are inherently numbering it according to Shabbos. And that means that every time you say the day of the week, you are also remembering Shabbos. Along these lines, there may be a kiyum of Zachor et Yom HaShabbat Lekadsho every day. When we read before the Shir Shel Yom, the parak of Tehillim assigned for that day of the week, when we say Hayom Yom Rishon b'Shabbat, for example, today is the first day of the week, that may be a kiyum and a fulfillment of Zachor Yom HaShabbat Lekadsho. And similarly, the Ramban al HaTorah writes that the pshat of the pasuk of Zachor Yom HaShabbat Lekadsho is Shenizkor b'chol yom tamid et HaShabbat, that we remember every day the Shabbos, always, Shelo nishkachehu, that we won't forget it, V'lo yitchalef lanu b'shar hayamim, and it won't be switched with other days. And again, the Ramban says the pshat of the pasuk is to remember Shabbos. But if so, what is the significance of the second verb, lekadsho, to sanctify Shabbos? And the answer is, well, that's what you have to remember. You have to remember that Shabbos is special, that it's separate, that it's holy, and that it's different from the other days of the week. But according to this general idea, the mitzvah is to remember Shabbos, and to remember that Shabbos is holy and separate. However, halacha l'maaseh, we paskin for the most part that the main aspect of the mitzvah of Zachor Yom HaShabbat Lekadsho, the main verb, as it were, is lekadsho, to make Shabbos holy. The Rambam writes at the very beginning of Hilchot Shabbos that the mitzvah is lekadesh et Yom HaShabbat b'dvarim, to sanctify the day of Shabbos with our words. In other words, according to the Rambam, and I think this is pretty much the majority opinion, the main mitzvah is to make Shabbos separate. And of course, the verb lekadesh, which comes up in various contexts, means to separate and usually to elevate something. Therefore, according to the Rambam, the mitzvah is to separate Shabbos from the other days of the week. And if so, when do you separate something from other things? When do you show that it is distinct? And you do that at the borderline, right where those two things touch each other. Therefore, it makes sense that what is the mitzvah of lekadesh et HaShabbat is to separate it, as the Rambam writes, b'knisato u'b'yitziato. You separate it at the beginning of Shabbos, and you separate it at the end of Shabbos to show the difference first between Chol and Shabbat beginning, and then between Shabbat ending and Chol beginning. And therefore the Rambam writes, based on the Gemara, that what is the mitzvah? The mitzvah is Kiddush and Havdalah. What Kiddush does is to separate Shabbos. It's making a statement that Shabbos is different and separate and holier at the beginning of Shabbos. And Havdalah is to separate Shabbos at the end of Shabbos. To say, okay, that holy part of the week is finished, and we're moving back to Chol. So, Lekadesh et HaShabbat beKnisato u'b'yitziato, according to the Rambam, the Kiddush and Havdalah are really just two aspects of the same mitzvah of Lekadesh et HaShabbat. But if the mitzvah is Lekadesh et HaShabbat, to sanctify Shabbos, to show that Shabbos is holy and different, then what is the beginning of the pasuk where it says Zachor? And the answer is, the Rambam writes that is how you are Mekadesh Shabbat. How do we show, how do we make Shabbos holier? And the answer is you make it separate by remembering what is special about it. In other words, remembering what's special and unique about Shabbos, and saying that explicitly in Kiddush and in Havdalah, is how we are Mekadesh Shabbat. The Rambam writes, Zochrehu Zechirat Shabbat v'Kiddush. Remember it with a remembrance of praise and holiness. So we remember the praiseworthy things about Shabbos, we remember the holiness of Shabbos, and in doing so, we sanctify it. So just to sum up, there are two aspects of this mitzvah of Zachor et Yom HaShabbat L'Kadsho. We can remember Shabbos, which means, again, to, throughout the week, remind ourselves of the importance of Shabbos, of the significance of Shabbos, either by preparing for Shabbos or by just counting down the days till Shabbos. Or the mitzvah is also Lekadesh et HaShabbat, which means to make Shabbos holy, which we do by fulfilling the mitzvah deoraita of Kiddush and Havdalah. And either way, if the mitzvah of is Zechirat Shabbos or Kiddush HaShabbat, either way, I wish us all a bracha that we can all be zocheh to be mekayim every aspect of this important mitzvah. Have a great day.